And welcome back into a brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat, our second new episode of this week. As always, we are your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller,
And my name's Brett Cornell.
and let's dive in. So, we have an awesome episode this week talking about redemption twists, which are any twists that can allow voted out players to get back into the game. There have been three of them in the history of the show that we will get into and break down. And so, without further ado, let's get into that first one, which is the outcast twist, which was used only in Survivor.
Season 7.
Do what?
Up to season 7.
Yep, used only in Pearl Islands, as I was about to say. The first 6 castaways went to a secret outcast camp that the players in the game were not told about ahead of time, did not know about. And they found out when the outcast, those 6 players, showed up to a challenge one day, ready to compete with the existing 2 tribes, Morgan and Drake. And the way this twist worked was if the outcasts finished first in the challenge, both Morgan and Drake would go to tribal and vote someone out, and the outcast would get to vote 2 people back in. If they finished second, the last place tribe only votes someone out, and the outcasts only get to vote 1 person back in. And if they finish last, nothing happens. The game goes on like normal. And what ended up happening was the Outcasts won the challenge. Morgan and Drake both go to tribal and vote someone out, and the Outcasts have their own tribal, and they vote Lil and Burton back into the game.
I remember watching this live, and it was so controversial at the time of the whole fan base. And I mean, back then we didn't have things in the first 10 seasons like Survivor Fan Jury to discuss this. I remember seeing it in print media that people arguing in the editorials, how is it fair that somebody voted out of the game is going to get a chance to win?
Yeah. And then it's still a controversial topic, however many
I
seasons later,
was
with
going to
38 and
say it's
40.
like it started then, and I almost wonder if maybe, and we'll get into the actual twist, but did the coverage of it maybe prevent CBS from touching this topic for a while? Like, what, 15 seasons essentially till Redemption Island?
Yeah. When Todd was on with us, he talked about like a website, I think it was, called Survivor Sucks that he used to be on. I can imagine that was probably going nuts at the time.
I imagine.
But and so
Think about this twist, Bruce.
I did I like it. It's and the 2 players that get back in go on to have a big season. Lil goes all the way to final 2 and it gets a lot of screen time for various reasons, whether it's her revenge against Andrew Savage for voting her out, or just Lil's a character. I'll put it that way. And then we see Burton come back into the game. By the way,
Yeah.
both of the people that get voted back in after getting voted back in, they had to draw buffs. Neither one of them wanted to go back to their same tribe. They both drew the buffs from the same tribe. And see,
I wanted
Lil comes back in and goes on a revenge path against Savage and gets him voted out at Merc. Burton, on the other hand, mends fences with Johnny Fairplay, and the 2 of them go on to run a lot of the season, essentially.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that because I found it really interesting, almost like to compare and contrast this season and watching, say, the split between like Julie and Lauren O'Connell in Edge of Extinction between the 2 tribes. Because what when they to start the new episode and we're about to go to tribal and see who's gonna come back in the game, you see that kind of contrast already where Drake really doesn't care.
Yeah.
Yet Burton and or not Burton, sorry, Ryan and Savage are on this dead set. Lil and Ryan and Nicole will not step on this beach for any minute longer than they have to.
Yeah. And look how that worked out for Savage and then
It,
eventually the rest of the Morgans.
it worked out horribly, but
Yeah,
it's
it did.
interesting to think of.
And then Fair and again, like pre Burton getting voted out, he and Fairplay hadn't seen eye to eye on a lot of stuff. So them being able to mend fences was huge for both of their games. They both go really deep into the game, playing really well together, as annoying as they were sometimes. And it's, yeah, I think that mindset from Andrew Savage of they don't deserve to be here. They got voted out. I'm sending him right back home. It cost him. You need to be more adaptable than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Something while we're on this topic before we go on about the actual vote that I found really interesting to take place in this twist. Because unlike a lot of tribals that we see when someone goes home where there's a unanimous decision, the rules stated that Jeff clearly stated that you aren't allowed to vote for yourself.
Yeah,
And I brought up the voting records just to make sure that I knew exactly what happened, even though I pretty well remembered it. The interesting thing I found is, despite the fact that you weren't allowed to vote for yourself, every single player here got votes to come back in the game.
interesting.
It was Burton and Lil with two, Nicole and Ryan. Oh, sorry, Burton and Lil with three, Nicole and Ryan with two, Michelle and Trish with one.
Wow, that's cool.
That one I found unique because I remember Gross reading the votes, well, not live, but like the first time anyone watched this episode and being like, wow, what, trying to calculate it in my head because I wasn't sure who was coming back until you see that moment where Lil passes out in excitement.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool, actually. That you, even though they couldn't vote for themselves, everyone got a vote. That's interesting. I would have loved to have seen like footage of just the dynamic of them living at the outcast beach while they were being hidden away.
They really missed a explanation on that that maybe would have made it a bit less controversial. Maybe something that I'm sure CBS would have taken advantage of if, say, YouTube was a thing back then.
Yeah, for sure. And before we move on to the next one, do you
90-minute episodes, but that's a different story.
yeah, before we move on to the next one, do you have any final words on the Outcast twist?
Do I have any final words over it?
Just like it by
Not
itself. We'll
really.
compare them all to each other after
Yeah,
we finish.
except
But
I would almost think this could maybe be a old school twist that they could throw back in the new era just to shock everybody, and it would be lots of fun.
yeah, I'd be down for that. And so now our next one is Redemption Island, which was used on Survivor Redemption Island, Survivor South Pacific, and Survivor Blood versus Water. And the way that it works is everyone that gets voted out goes to Redemption Island. And unlike the Outcast twist, players were told about this at the beginning of all three of those seasons that it was in play. And only 2 to 3 people are on Redemption Island can be there at a time. So at each episode, we have a little mini challenge or a Redemption Island duel where maybe 2, maybe 3 people will compete with each other in a challenge. And the last place finisher is officially gone home. Probst makes them throw their buff in an urn of fire, which I hate, by the way, because if I'm a player, I want to keep my buff as a souvenir. I don't want to throw it in a fire. That's stupid. But that's pretty much my biggest complaint with this one is it makes me cringe every time that they have to throw that in the
I
fire and they
agree.
don't get a choice. But
Do they know how much money these things can make on YouTube on eBay?
I don't know. But and so they have those duels each episode. Last place player eliminated permanently this time. And it keeps going throughout the season. And I believe every time it's been used, it has produced 2 returnee spots that are guaranteed to return.
Yeah.
So I like this one. And we'll get into this when we comparing them. I like that you have to keep re-earning your spot every episode.
Exactly. I personally really like this one. And again, like you said, we'll get in it when you compare it. But despite some criticism of just the idea of getting back in the game, you can't say that players in this playing one of these 3 seasons didn't earn it. Because not one time did they ever have complete immunity from going home
Correct.
for the nature of based on the nature of being voted out. They had to win and win and win and win and win if they wanted any shot at it.
Yeah, which is really impressive when you look at like Blood versus Water, where Laura Moret and Tina Wesson, and I love both of those players,
Yeah.
are first and second in however many duels in a row. They stayed out on Redemption Island as long as anyone has. And so the two of them absolutely killed it. Ozzy stayed out there for a little while the second time he got voted because he gets himself voted out so that he can go to Redemption Island and take out someone from the other tribe at the merge and come right back in, which by Ozzy standards is good strategy,
Yeah.
but he gets voted out again because his tribe still loses merge numbers and he stays out there for a while. But like I feel like and see Ozzy played before Redemption Island was a thing. So I
Yeah.
legitimately think like they could have been trying to think of a new twist and like what is the perfectly tailored twist for if we bring Ozzy back? What would he excel at? What would give him screen time? And this is like the
Yeah,
perfect thing for him.
I
Like,
could see that being the case. Because, I mean,
so perfect.
even though I'm personally not that big of an Aussie fan, you don't want to
Same.
bring Aussie back only to have him be targeted and go home early, and there's no point. And you also don't want to bring a character like Ozzy back only for him to essentially have no chance to win because he probably won't play.
Yeah. And
You
I'm
want to
also
encourage the player to be like that and say, "Hey, will you play? Here's our twist. You're not guaranteed to win. You're a player in the game, but you've got a second shot at it. Should you think that that'll help you in any way?"
yeah, and I like Ozzy his first season. I feel like after I'm just not a fan of his overall career. I feel like
Yeah,
he gets worse on 16 and then 23 he's worse than 16. We don't see a ton of him on Game Changers, so I can't say he was worse than 23, but he gets a
yeah,
little bit worse each time. His
I agree.
second and third time playing.
Ozzy and JT.
Yeah. Well, JT still is likable every time and like good TV. He just kind of strategically plays like a bonehead. Ozzy just gets arrogant and less likable each time he comes out
Yeah,
there. And then Game Changers, they just kind of don't give him enough screen time for me to really have an opinion. But
fair.
like Redemption, all this Ozzy talk to say like them using it on South Pacific was great because it's like was feels like it was designed for the way he plays the game, which is only the physical game.
Yeah,
But Redemption Island also they show the players on Redemption Island. I mentioned with the Outcast twist that I wish we could have seen them living at the Outcast camp and what that was like. We get
yeah, I agree.
content of the players on Redemption Island talking about what it felt like to be voted out on
Yep.
Blood versus
And the
Water.
the
Go
other
ahead.
thing I'm just thinking of too, we talked about how in South Pacific that this was really tailored for Ozzy, but I mean, we never see it. But you could almost make an argument in a way that maybe the idea came up to give Boston Rob a chance.
Or Russell, one of the two. They wanted the
Yeah.
two of them going head to head.
But I mean, with Rob, he's honest. We never really remember that because Rob's on a season with Redemption Island when he was in peak physical shape, unlike when he played Winners at War.
Yeah.
and he
Oh my
just
god.
strategically and socially dominates that game from day 1 to day 39, and who cares if it's there because Rob doesn't need it.
And see, here's the thing though. Ozzy gets a lot of the credit, but like Rob is also arguably the best challenge player ever if you look at it numbers
That's what
wise.
I'm thinking of.
I can oh,
I'm
oh my
like, maybe
gosh,
they
he would
just
have
liked
dominated
the
Redemption
twist and
Island.
said, yeah, I'm like, maybe they just liked the twist and said, let's try it with Ozzy next year.
Here's the thing though. Rob's win on Redemption Island already gets criticized a lot just because people don't like him and they want a reason to discredit him. So they want to hold like the a very weak cast against him, and that it was the fourth time he had played. Can you
Yeah.
imagine if he had gotten voted out and got back in with Redemption Island and won? Like how upset the anti-Rob fans would be.
I'll say this, even as someone who's a big Rob fan, he wouldn't be in my top 5 players if he did that.
I mean, I agree. I love him, but like yeah, and based on gameplay alone, I still put Chris Underwood, as the last place simply because he played a great game when he came back in, like with the hand he was dealt, yes, but well, I mean, he's the only winner to get voted out, so to me, he by
And we'll
default
get to
goes
that
last.
game in a minute. I think
Yeah,
it's probably the one we have the most thoughts on, seeing that it was the most recent, but all well, not the second most recent, but also that you and I both watched it at the same time.
yeah. Well, it was the most recent of these three twists.
Yes, I just mean when it was at work.
Oh, yeah. So with that segue, moving on to Edge of Extinction, it was used on Survivor Edge of Extinction and Survivor Winners at War. And what's interesting is, like we mentioned with the Outcast, the players did not know ahead of time. With Redemption Island, they did know ahead of time every time it was used. The first time Edge of Extinction is used, the players did not know until the first battle back. With the second time it was used, they knew immediately.
Yeah.
And so basically, what happens is a player gets voted out, and they see a little sign that gives them a choice. Do you want your adventure to continue? Yes or no. And if it's yes, they go to this island that is the edge of extinction. And in the way I've heard probes describe it is designed to be as hard as possible and
Yeah.
designed just basically to point out how hard Survivor is anyway, and then amplify it. And the first time they do it, they really kind of just sit there. There's not a ton to do there. I like it better the second time they did it because they added little challenges that the edge players could do. Fire tokens were in play. I would
Yeah.
absolutely bring fire tokens back, by the way. I thought that was a cool idea. And
Yeah, so did I.
Mike White killed it, though, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I, I'm assuming fire tokens is the twist that story comes from, but oh well. And then the second time they used it, like I said, they have these twists, they have the fire tokens. They're actually able to affect the game
Yeah.
and, send Tony an extortion letter, which is one of the funniest scenes on that whole season because Tony thinks he's getting to use it and is all excited. Then realizes
Yeah.
he's the one getting extorted and complains, oh, this would be illegal in the real world. I'm a cop. It's code whatever. Like, this shouldn't be allowed to happen, even though so
That
excited
was
to get to
funny.
do it to someone else a minute before. Great scene. Look that up sometime if you haven't seen it. But nonetheless, there are two guaranteed spots at Merge and at, I want to say Final Five, but I'm just going to say beginning of the finale to be safe.
Yeah. Um, final 5, but then the person who comes back becomes 6.
Yeah.
So it's like it was after Denise went home and after Aurora went home.
And see the difference again, because we kind of get two different versions with Edge. The first time, both Rick Devens at Merge and Chris Underwood at 5/6, I believe, are given idols when they come back in.
are.
Whereas,
Except for they have it's like that half idol twist where they have to give half of it to somebody else and then survive one vote and then it becomes an idol.
and see, with Winners at War, though, like Natalie coming back into the game had an idol that she had bought with fire tokens from those challenges.
Yeah,
And Tyson may have had one at Merge. I don't remember.
yeah, I can't remember.
But they earned those. They bought them with fire tokens from the Edge challenges. They weren't just given them. So
And I thought that was a big part too of both the fairness of it between both seasons and the strategy of how to determine your best course of effort. Because when you're just given something by production, it almost felt like it was interference in the game.
yeah,
When the player to earn something, they also, with those fire tokens, had to decide how to spend them. And the idols were certainly a big advantage of it. But I think, like what Tyson said at one time, was one of the most brilliant things I've heard. Where, at least in terms of these redemption twists, maybe in Modern Survivor, where we have to remember Tyson is a former professional athlete.
yeah,
And what Tyson says is, I can't remember if he said, I'm sure he didn't say it in the show. I think he said it after the game, but that if I spend my fire tokens on the edge, buying an advantage in the next challenge, they're going to give me like 2 knots already to untied, let's say.
yeah,
As Tyson was saying, and I thought this was so smart, that's probably something that you can do with a few seconds. A giant peanut butter is actually going to be more effective before a challenge than having getting an advantage in said challenge.
yeah, for sure. And what are your thoughts on kind of the way they changed Edge a little bit between 38 and 40, where they added the different challenges and ways to?
I I thought it was smart of production. I mean, there's no point to just make people go crazy. And we
Yeah,
could see, for example, when Wentworth showed up, the toll that the Edge was taking on Reem,
for sure.
who's been there since day 2.
Yeah,
She was already socially a little different in the game, but the what she brought to the game, what she brought on Edge specifically when Wentworth was there, was just so outside normal human interaction when you just see somebody for the first time in 21 days.
yeah, for sure.
So at least with them changing it and doing the log challenge, which was so memorable, especially to see Ethan overcome his struggles in that situation and to be looking for tokens and to see the bond between, say, like Natalie and Parvati out there and to see Robin Amber reconnect. That was gave us more Edge content to actually, one, make a better show because we had something to watch, but two, to make it at least livable for the contestants who had to be out there for over a month for some people.
Yeah, Edge. That is another thing. Edge gives us great TV. It gives us some really cool, powerful scenes. Backtracking a little bit while we're on this subject, because I was gonna say it in the last segment and got sidetracked about Redemption Island. Blood versus Water, when the two people on Redemption Island were Candace and Rupert, is such a interesting personality combination. Because Rupert's
Yeah,
just going to do his thing no matter what. He'll be up early in the morning, clanging and banging the pots or whatever he was doing that was loud. And Candace just kind of gets annoyed by everything anyway. So that was a fantastic I hate the way Rupert was there. Like we had seen the first impression vote before and since, but that's to my knowledge the only time they actually were out of the game right there at the marooning with.
yeah, I didn't like that at all. Like
But
with Sandy and Sierra, it was interesting because it gave them that dilemma of arriving at camp first and having to decide risk versus reward. But with Rupert just I mean, well, one with Laura technically being voted out, and then Rupert knowing that he's already played the game very deep a couple of times,
Yep.
giving her his spot. It was like, no, we've seen Rupert and Laura do a loved ones challenge together on All Stars. We want to see them play together, not sit
Yeah.
on this island and not do very much.
Yeah. So going back to Edge, because I just wanted to mention the funny scene of Candace and Rupert being the two people on Redemption Island, because mix of strong personalities there. I do like that they added the challenges for Edge. First off, because it makes for really powerful moments, like we see Natalie go from first boot, struggling on Edge, kind of dominate Edge also, and go all the way to a second place finish. And that was a really cool, inspiring storyline. And but also it gives the player that comes back in more of like a resume or an argument. Whereas like 38 Chris Underwood came back in, they really hadn't done anything on like game wise on Edge other than they kind of just sat there and survived. Whereas with 40, Natalie comes back in and here's all the stuff I did. I sent Tony this extortion. I sent this to this person. I did all this stuff and was still affecting the game in big ways while not even in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
And if she had
Um,
just put herself against Tony in fire, because I've heard people say Tony wasn't very good at fire. If she beats Tony in fire, I feel like she probably wins that season, and everyone, including myself, would probably complain about it. But it'd be such a cool story, also.
Probably. Who knows? It's
Yep,
hard to say.
we'll never know. But great ending to Winners at War. I would have had reasons to be happy for any of the final four winning.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do love I'm happy they changed Edge. Edge does give us great TV though. It's like you mentioned, it gives us those Ethan, Natalie, Reem, inspiring storylines where you see people overcoming how much of a struggle that island is.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. The only thing in my mind about it, and it kind of hits on what I said with Redemption Island, is there wasn't enough chances to be forced to exit the game. In which case, you essentially, even if you lost the first edge battle back coming into the merge, got to just go back to the edge and essentially had immunity all the way to the final five if you could do an obstacle course. That I thought was a bit too much.
Which is the case with both Chris and Natalie, who finished first and second in their respective seasons. Were both there for the first Battle Back challenge. Both
Yeah,
lost it, but won the second one, which kind
that's
of
it.
leads us into the compare and contrast. And this first question is one side of a coin, and I'll flip that coin over afterwards. Which of these three twists do you feel like is the most broken? I guess is the word I'll use.
And I'd say is the edge of extinction. And it goes to exactly that point is that there's easy ways to fix it. It's a great pre-merge twist, but a spot in the final five is just way too high of a reward for a battle back.
And I agree, it is Edge. Also, to me, is because whoever returns at 5 has had a chance to be because of the way it works with the jury. Anyone on Edge after the second battle back is on the jury. That second returnee has been spending time with the jurors, building relationships out of the game, struggling on Edge, kind of trauma bonding in a way.
Yeah,
And they have these relationships with the jury that the other finalists don't have. And it almost becomes an advantage that you got voted out.
absolutely. And not only do you get to know the jury, but the people coming back from Edge are bonding positively with the jury.
Yeah, for
where
sure.
the people who are in the game can have the jury be very bitter with them as to why they are on the edge.
Yeah, and you're also getting to talk as you're bonding with the jurors. You're getting to know what they're looking for at Final Tribal, what they're wanting to see or hear. And, you have the opportunity to do what Natalie did and come back into the game and be like, oh, all the jurors are saying if nobody takes Tony out, he wins. Whether that's true or not, nobody in the game knows that. And so you kind of have that advantage of knowing what they want and also being able to tell the other players that are still in the game what the jury may or may not have been saying, and it may or may not be true or not. And we have no way of knowing that. But the jury, the way Edge works with the jury, it makes it an advantage to get voted out.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the flip side of that coin is, which do you feel like is the least broken?
And that's where I go the complete kind of what I said, but the complete other way is that's where it's I'm gonna pick Redemption Island. And it's because how I just said that you have essentially immunity on the edge. In Redemption Island, it's win or go home. It's the FIFA World Cup knockout stage, not a friendly competition where we're all best friends.
I'm for this one, I do have a different answer. I'm gonna say outcasts simply because the returnee spot isn't guaranteed. Like as a group of six, they had to win a challenge just to even get that spot back, as
Yeah.
well as the people that returned weren't just doing something physical only. They had to have been likable and been social, or what I've heard a rumor with Lil's case, been annoying enough to where they don't want to be with you on the pre-jury trip. Because I've heard or read that somewhere. I have no idea if it's true or not, but you get voted back into the game by your peers. You're not just being Aussie and only good at the physical game, and so you get back in.
Absolutely.
I
I
do
can see
love
that.
Redemption Island though, because like I said, you have to keep earning your spot every episode.
Yeah. Definitely both twists that I wouldn't be either or wouldn't be complaining if they showed up in another season down the road.
And even Edge, there are so many easy ways to fix it. You can either cut it off at the first returnee, and
That's exactly what I would do.
and not only that, like the people that lost are done. Start the jury from there going forward. The people that have been on Edge from the beginning don't need to be on the jury
Yeah.
judging a finalist that they never actually played with or on a tribe with.
Let me say this. Edge of Extinction could be a great twist. It's a bad theme.
Yeah, I mean, Redemption Island was also not was a good twist. Didn't necessarily make for a good theme for an entire season, but
What I mean by that is when you name the season Survivor Edge of Extinction, it had to be in play for the season Edge of Extinction.
oh yeah, for sure.
If you make a theme and have a whole season based around it, and it finishes on day 12, then it's like, is this Survivor Borneo all over again? We don't really know.
Yeah, and I feel like the only
Now it
reason
might be easy to fix because you could just call it Survivor 47.
I feel like a lot of the reason it was brought back a second time was a lot of the winners and the older players have kids and families now that they didn't want to leave those people just to be the first or second or third person voted out and be done.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for winners at war and the players that were on that season, Edge of Extinction might be a one and done.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's a good point too. Because like we saw in the loved ones visit, that it's like what Michelle is the only person who doesn't bring a romantic partner out there, and like 75% of the cast brought children.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite loved ones visit too, because even all the people on
Oh,
Edge that had been voted out got that visit,
yeah,
and then they all left the little jury area to go swarm Jeff with a group hug afterwards.
that was great.
But of these three, my favorite one, just as a fan, is probably Redemption Island. I love that you have to keep earning your spot every episode. I love the duels. I love like someone like Matt who won the first battle back and gets sent right back. You see that frustration and that drive to want to come back in to get your revenge. The only thing I don't like is having to burn your urn, no, burn your buff. Because if I'm a player, I want to keep that as a souvenir. But other than that, it's a great
Excellent.
twist. I love the Redemption Island is a season and not a great cast. Awesome winner. I love Rob, but the season as a whole
Yeah,
could have been better. But the twist itself is incredible.
it was.
And so, what is your favorite of these three? Just as a fan, not talking about game wise.
Yeah, I think I'd still say Redemption Island
Me
for
too.
kind of the same reasons I mentioned.
I am kind of surprised they never did Outcasts again, though.
But I'm saying it was so controversial at the time that I think productions just probably thought was risk averse.
Edge, yeah, Edge was controversial also, though, and they brought that back. So,
Really fun, and I guess it wouldn't have. I'm glad they didn't do it because it wouldn't have worked with what happened with both Jenna and Sue. But if we had
gosh,
Outcasts on All Stars,
that would have been great. Can you? It wouldn't have if the Sue and Rich Hatch thing doesn't happen. Can you imagine like Redemption Island or Edge of Extinction confessionals from Sue Hawk after being voted out, but having a chance to get back in?
yeah, exactly.
And like she's not one of my favorites at all. I
No,
hate the way that situation was handled. I feel bad for her in that scenario. Overall, I'm not a huge fan, but her Edge of Extinction confessionals of being ticked off about being voted out would have been gold.
yeah. And like, imagine like Hatch and Rudy just chilling on Edge of Extinction together.
Oh yeah, Hatch sitting on Edge of Extinction, just waiting to see who the next person that shows up when would have been great.
Yeah. We're talking about this. I just gotta ask. Let's say that we'll factor the Sue situation out, but go all the way up to um Jerry rape at the split tribe. So like
Oh,
anyone before Jerry's eligible, who do you think gets back into the game? You obviously don't pick Sue or Jenna.
hmm, probably Colby because he wasn't as James refers to in Heroes versus Villains, Superman in the fat suit yet. He was still like prime Colby beasting out in challenges. So
You know, I think Colby would have a really good chance for it. I think Sestunino would have a really good chance for it. Maybe even Jerry.
see, I'm imagining Edge though, where Jerry Manthe is on Edge when Lex shows up. And the I told you so that she has to have given him there is
That
must have
w-
been.
where was the Ponderosa videos on that season?
I don't know, but like if I'm Lex in that scenario, whether it's Edge or Ponderosa or whatever, like I am not looking forward to the first time I talk to Jerry because they were each other's number one the whole time. And
Yeah,
Lex threw
that's
that
for
away
sure.
on a promise from someone on another tribe. Oh gosh. So enough random all stars talk on our. Of course, the two of us would do a redemption twist episode and get into all this all Survivor All Stars talk. But a line blindside first boot. What three names do you have?
My three names are gonna be players that were memorable within this kind of twist as a whole, I'm going to give you from each one, from the Edge of Extinction, I'm going to give you a bit of a challenge. You always say you first boot the winner, Natalie Anderson, your favorite winner. From Redemption Island, Matt Elrod, and from the Outcast twist, Burton Roberts.
Okay, so when you said Matt, my response was to first boot him because if I blindside him, he's gonna take it personally based on his attitude towards Rob when he gets voted out the second time. But then you said Burton, and watching Burton and Fairplay together, I can't give him the chance to find that person and just be good at the game, but really annoying about it for a lot of the season. Natalie, I'm gonna align with. She's my favorite winner, and I don't know. Like I feel like me and her would work well together. She seems like a really fun, likable person. I'm taking a huge risk there because if me and her make it to the end together, I could lose that jury. But I feel like that's my strongest shot to get to the end. Both with Matt or Burton, I don't feel like I have a great chance to get there. So I guess blindside Burton and first boot Matt because I feel like Burton might be fine being blindsided. Whereas, again, we saw Matt get voted out the second time and take it super personally. So, what about
Fair
you?
enough. Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on those three. Same one.
Yeah.
Align Natalie, blindside, Burton, first boot Matt. I think the exact same thing. Yes, Natalie's the biggest threat, but she's also the player that can probably help you get the furthest in the game.
Yeah. And on the topic of Natalie, she's my favorite winner. I said a few minutes ago, had she won Winners at War, like she came so close to doing, I still would have found it annoying. But the storyline of going from first boot to second place is such an inspiring storyline. I love Natalie on Winners at War. Just the confessionals we get from her. The storyline was great. Awesome season out of her.
Yeah, it's an impressive game for the hand that she got dealt quickly into that game.
Yeah, and came back somehow. So your three are just kind of three random names I put together. And from Survivor Philippines, you have RC Saint Amour, I believe is her last name.
Really good French pronunciation.
Yeah, total guess. You have Angie Layton, also from Philippines. And since I was thinking about our jury questions episode recently, for whatever reason, Morgan McLeod from Kagion.
Okay. I'm going to say ally with OC. I think she's the best player here, but she also didn't go far into a game where I don't know how much of a threat she'd be to win.
Yeah.
Blindside Morgan so she can ask another similar hilarious question. And that leaves us to first boot Angie because if your strategy in the game is we could have cookies, you're probably not going to help me very much.
But to be fair, if either one of us is on that beach and cookies arrive, that would make camp life better. Like, she didn't answer the question incorrectly. It was just a dumb answer, is all.
What about you?
Probably similar. I feel like RC is the best option to align with. I'm first booting Angie also because of the cookie thing. I'm just pointing out that it technically wasn't an incorrect answer. But
Yeah,
the reason I'm aligning with RC is Morgan was not super liked on Kagion. There was a lot of feeling that she was just laying in the shelter or didn't deserve to be there because she didn't help out enough. And she butted heads with Trish and Cass, which everyone did, but still.
yeah.
So I feel like if I'm aligned with Morgan, I could get associated with that negativity and become a target just by attachment. So I'll align with RC and blindside Morgan and first boot Angie also.
We
This was a fun episode.
Yeah, it was. So this will be out on our normal Saturday, and then we'll always have an episode out on Saturday, but there might be a bit of bonus content thrown in depending on developments as we go towards 46.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a plan for another 46 episode eventually, but you guys will have to wait a little bit to find out what that is. So,
Yeah,
without
won't be
further
long.
ado, rate, review, subscribe on YouTube, all the social media places. Go follow us there.
And grab your coaches and head back to camp.
Yep. Have a great week, guys.